Trump's FBI moves to criminally charge major climate groups because apparently protesting the climate, protesting the behavior, the policies that are causing climate crisis should be illegal. The FBI is moving to criminalize groups like Habitat for Humanity for receiving grants from the EPA under the Biden administration. Citibank revealed in a court filing Wednesday that it was told to freeze the group's bank accounts at the FBI's request. Habitat for Humanity. Now, there's some criticism of Habitat for Humanity, like, certain times they have not built the best homes or things like that. Those criticisms are not, that I've ever seen, are not that they're committing fraud for climate protest. The reason that FBI said to freeze their bank accounts was the FBI alleges the group are involved in possible criminal violations, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. The FBI has told Citibank that recipients of EPA climate grants are being considered as potentially liable for fraud. That is, the Trump administration wants to criminalize work on climate science and impacts, and they have shut down a lot of climate science that was ongoing. The incoming administration not only canceled federal grants, but declares recipients as criminals. All these grantees applied under government calls for environmental work were reviewed and accepted. Trump wants to jail them. Even if this had nothing to do with climate change, climate crisis, the idea of you apply for a federal grant, you get it, and then the next president says by getting that grant, you're guilty of fraud is kind of amazing. The Trump administration is going after any kind of even small level work to stop climate crisis. The tiniest of things, because it's kind of funny because how much has Habitat for Humanity actually stopped our government from moving forward on our policies that are just absolutely eating this planet alive and shitting it out? Zero, maybe less than zero. Habitat for Humanity has not stopped climate crisis, okay? At all. It might have built some houses for people who were flooded out by climate crisis. The idea that the Trump administration wants to believe we need to stop you got to remember what's at the heart of this. And deep down, I like to get to those core level understandings of these things. Yes, the Republicans say climate change isn't happening because they don't believe in 99.7% of all peer-reviewed scientific studies of literally hundreds of thousands of scientists. As many have said, climate science is now globally probably one of the most studied things the world has ever known. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that until 50 years ago, you weren't trading information internationally that easily. It is one of the most studied things ever by our modern level of advanced scientists, and 99.7% say it's happening. Yeah, you've got that kind of understanding that Republicans want to say it's not happening, so anything that would even pretend to acknowledge that it's happening is bad for their policies because it doesn't look good for their government that where they say climate change is happening to have scientists studying how climate change is happening. But what's below that? Why is it that it is so dangerous for the current status quo of ruling elite to acknowledge that climate change is happening? Well, I'd say the two biggest ones are it reveals that capitalism will destroy this planet. Market economics, the idea that you can just make a lot of money by knocking down a forest. If someone owns a forest, cut it all down, sell the wood, make a shit ton of money, maybe millions and millions of dollars, depending on the size of the forest. What does that do for the future? It destroys a whole swath of the world that becomes unlivable. Endangered species die. Animals have nowhere to go. There's nothing to grow food. It is utterly devastating to our future, but that's not how our market system works, right? Our market system works, how much money can you get right now? So knocking down forests is great for getting money right now. Climate crisis just acknowledging it, admits that we are destroying our ability to sustain on this planet. So they have to get rid of it for that reason. Wipe it off, act like it's not happening. Another reason, probably equally important, and it still has to do with economics, but is the petrodollar. Is that the U.S., our money is based on petroleum, based on fossil fuel sales and usage. And so if countries around the world and people around the world switch away from fossil fuels, that is devastating to the U.S. dollar. And we're seeing it happening. Used to be that 60% of the global reserve currency was in the US dollar. I think it's down to 40-something%. So that's decreasing because multiple reasons, but one of the biggest ones is petroleum is We're switching away from petroleum. Petrodollar is becoming less important. There's many countries that used to buy and sell oil in dollars, and now they aren't. So that also is harming the petrodollar. And at the heart of this, one of the big reasons, part of it's for the way the U.S. behaves, the way we just destroy countries. That's having an impact. But part of it is because a lot of these countries are moving away from, or at least attempting to move away from, at least they have the idea of moving away from endless fossil fuel usage. And if you admit climate crisis is happening, then the only rational thing to do is immediately move off of fossil fuels. And so they have to shred the entire idea that it's even a thing, like that it even exists. And so they're trying to get rid of organizations that just have grants connected to climate. And of course, they're also shredding the EPA but as I've said, the EPA, was limp dick at best. There's like 1,000 chemicals they hadn't added to their toxic chemical list, because the last time they updated their toxic chemical list was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago or something. So as all these new regularly used chemicals come into play, the EPA just hadn't added it. Was like, no, what are you talking about? That's not dangerous. And even that limp dick EPA is too much for Donald Trump. So he wants to shred it even more.